Hello everyone and welcome back to another AFK journey video. In this video, we're going to be talking about should you recruit for Lucca tomorrow. So the first thing to mention before we even get into it is that if you're more focused on Dream Realm performance, recruiting for Lucca is not going to help you there at all. He is a dedicated tank and tanks only really have use in AFK stages or PvP, apart from Thorin, who also has a debuff, which is helpful in Dream Realm bosses, but for the most part that is the case for tanks. Now the interesting thing about Lucca is when you compare him to other Lightbearer tanks, he is going to be the most and the best dedicated tank we have. Up until now, Lightbearers have really lagged behind in the tanks because we have Temesia, who is kind of like a hybrid damage dealing controller. On her own, she doesn't have amazing tanking capabilities, and then you have Lucius, who is more of a shielder rather than a hero that has amazing self-tankiness. Lucca is a hero that can take a beating, and he has a lot of ways of basically shielding himself, restoring his health. He's going to be really difficult to kill. So he kind of reminds you of Antandra. Antandra is such a unkillable tank in the Mauler faction, or even Granny from the Wilders. All of the factions, even Celestial and Hypogeans now with Dunlinger and Fresto, have a dedicated tank for their team, but Lightbearers were lacking that, and Lucca provides that. And this is good, for example, if you want to go for a PvP comp of Lucca, Rowan, Vala, now you have three really solid PvP heroes potentially to run to create that Lightbearer type synergy. And it's even more important in this season because you want to get those Lightbearer buff tiles sometimes, and I'm pretty sure Lucca will be one of the best options to run to enable those Lightbearer buff tiles, because he's a really good tank, and on a lot of teams for PvP you want a tank, and even for AFK stages, having a really difficult to kill tank is really valuable for you, especially pushing at a high deficit. So I do think he's gonna have decent use in AFK stages and PvP. But like we mentioned, he is not going to help in Dream Realm. So for example, for an earlier game player, free-to-play player, I would not recommend recruiting for him, because you really want to focus on all of your Dream Realm heroes and get them all sorted, and there are a lot of them out there, so it's better to save your resources for that. Okay, so we'll just briefly go through all of his abilities in case you missed the previous video uploaded yesterday. So Quakeslam is his ultimate. It will begin with 600 pre-filled energy, which means he only needs to charge up 400 to cast it for the first time. It has some minor damage, nothing too amazing, but it's mainly here for the fact that it can protect your backline heroes. If there's any enemy in your backline, he will prioritizing and rush towards them and slam them back to his original position in the front line, protecting your backline heroes. It will also cause a stun effect. First of all, it would knock them into the air and then cause a stun effect. So he could even, have some synergy with Almus because he does have a knockup, but the thing is, his overall kit doesn't have as many knockups, so I don't think I would recommend him with Almus, but it's just an interesting type idea. And Lucca is immune to control effects while casting the skill. He has a lot of control immunity in his kit, so he is going to counter Iron teams, Almus teams pretty hard. And that is another advantage because in PvP, well, now control is becoming weaker and weaker due to the season buff tiles, which give you unaffected states like Mauler and Wilder buff tiles and even Valor Shield spell. But still, there are still strong teams using crowd control, and Lucca is going to counter that. Ruthless Ram, this is the really interesting ability, to be honest, because when you don't have his Mythic Plus upgrade, it's only going to target one enemy, but it will interrupt them, which will cut their or cancel their skill cast and disarm them for 4 seconds. So I'm thinking about using this to counter Taylene, who usually will be up in the front line and will be susceptible to this attack. The other thing is when you get a Mythic Plus plus 10 exclusive equipment, this Ruthless Ram will turn into a one-tile arc. So he'll be disarming and interrupting potentially 3 enemies depending on how many melee heroes are in the opponent team or who are in melee range, and that is really powerful as well. And then also giving him a pretty nice shield. We calculated this 400 plus 400% of physical and magical defense in total will equate to a bit over 20% of his health based on his current base stats that he has. So it's over a 20% health based shield. It's on an 8-second cooldown, but if you can give him haste from a Damien Toy Chariot, it can be reduced in cooldown. And imagine you could get this down to a 5 or 6 second cooldown. keep giving you over 20% health shielding, and keep interrupting and disarming enemies for 4 seconds on like a 5 or 6 second cooldown. That would be really strong, right? And that's what I'm seeing his potential. I really like this disarm. I believe this means the opponent will not be able to cast a skill for those 4 seconds, and that is really strong. But the way to counter him, of course, is to run a hero in the front, just one single melee hero who will take the disarm and will be in melee range with Lucca. And have that hero who doesn't really care about his skill casting, like maybe even a Thorn, because once Thorn begins casting his ultimate, he can't be interrupted. So I think Thorn and then like just backline heroes along with Thorn would be a counter to Lucca, like this mechanic. But on offense, you know, you could be running into multiple defenses which have multiple melee heroes which you can get advantage of disarming them, or even have against Talene teams. But really, what I'm interested in is trying to reduce his cooldown further. Trying to decrease it as much as possible by giving him haste buffs, and I'm thinking Damien is going to be his best ally. Maybe even Shakir. Shakir gives a haste buff in the wolf form. Courageous Call. This is also a really strong ability, increasing his damage reduction up to 35%, and also dispelling all debuffs onto himself, even the control effects, and he can cast this even when he's being controlled. So if this comes off cooldown, he will be able to cast this ability even when he's like affected by an Entangling Vines of Arden or any other form of crowd control, like a freeze from Carolina's ultimate. He will be able to cast this and dispel that, as well as all of the debuffs from him. It's on a 12-second cooldown, which is kind of high. However, this is going to go down with haste again. So I really think haste is going to power up Lucca and make him even more insane. And now, if you have a Supreme Plus ability, just to link this, he's going to get 15% HP recovery each time he casts Courageous Call. So, like, he has his shielding of over 20% health. On this ability, he's going to get 15% HP healing if you have his Supreme Plus active, and 35% damage reduction. He's going to be really difficult to kill. You can't control him and lock him down, because if we take a look now at his Mythic Plus ability, this is going to make him steadfast. As soon as you unlock his Mythic Plus, even without upgrading it, he will be steadfast, meaning he will not be displaceable. So Iron will not be able to displace him and lock him down. Opponents will not be able to like almost knock him down, or other Temesia, Soren, things to knock down opponents which usually have value will not get any value on him. And he'll be able to consistently cast his abilities, even cleansing himself of control effects with this Courageous Call. Hero Focus is going to make him even more tanky. Another 29% HP is huge. That's a lot. Like, I don't know what other tanks get this much HP from their Hero Focus. That's a crazy amount, and especially because you're going to be getting 15% of your total HP as healing each time you cast Courageous Call, it's even more value. And his Mythic Plus ability, now again, the thing is, this is going to be providing him Steadfast, and also it's going to create Ruthless Ram into a one-tile arc. I think this is the most powerful, but you will have to have 2 allies placed to support Lucca. And what that means is, to support Lucca, you will need to place an ally right behind him, adjacent tile behind him when a battle starts. So for example, like let's say Lucca is over here, like I'm just clicking on the screen, or Lucca is over here. Then you're gonna have 1, 2, 3 tiles which will be adjacent and behind him. And so if you place even 2 heroes in any of these tiles, that is going to support him enough to have Ruthless Ram deal a one-tile arc area of effect. And I think no matter what happens to these allies, I think for the whole match, he will have this one-tile arc effect. You just have to place them at the beginning of the battle. And I think that can be pretty strong. But like we mentioned, if the opponent only brings 1 melee hero, then Lucca is not going to get a lot of value from that arc. Basically, it will have no added value. But if they have multiple melee heroes, or if they have a Talene along with melee heroes, I think it can get a lot of value. The thing is, this buff that he provides to the supporting allies is only a 5% boost in their attack, which is really minor. This is like low, this is really low. This is like plus 10 exclusive recruitment Dunlinger type level buff, which is only a 4% attack buff, or Supreme plus Rainier buff, which is a 4% attack buff. This is a really low buff. This is hardly going to help. But for each ally who is supporting him, he will get 220% of the allies' attack as a shield at the beginning of the match. This is going to be for AFK stages. Like, imagine you have 3 allies supporting him. That's up to 660% of like an ally's attack, and it could be high if they're like a damage dealer of a shield. And usually, like 100% of your attack is usually about 10% of your health. But if it's like a damage dealer, it might even be more than that. So either way, this is going to be like a 60 to 70% health shield potentially for Lucca right at the beginning of the match. And then he has more shields to cast. He has more damage reduction to cast and healing. He has massive HP to begin with. He's just going to be like, honestly, he's going to be one of the tankiest heroes in the game. But the question is that going to be enough to make him useful? Like in PvP, having a tank is good. However, you can bypass the tank, right? You can try to get into the back line or deal AoE damage. Lucca will counter to an extent, because if like Sylvina's jumping in the back, he's gonna basically take that Sylvina and push her back into the front line. And so I think he will counter Sylvina. But if the opponent has like a Diurnal, right, who's just going to shred through your everyone, including your Lucca, what is Lucca really going to do? If Lucca's the last man standing, there's nothing he can do. He's not going to kill the opponent. Lucca is just there to like be a meat shield for your team. But if the opponent has any way of dealing AoE damage or hitting your backline without actually jumping into it, Lucca can't really do anything about it. And if the opponent has like one melee tank just to keep the aggro of Lucca, then Lucca is not going to be able to get much disarm value. So that's really the way that Lucca will be countered. But for AFK stages, I think he is going to be meta, because right now the Lightbearer comp with Tassi already is strong. And this is going to supercharge that comp by having Lucca like the unbreakable tank in the front, and then having just enough time for Roa and Tassi just to charge everyone up. So yeah, I honestly like his synergy of his kit. He's basically he's here for one thing, and that is to tank the opponent like no other hero, and also be uncontrollable. However, there are counters to that, like we mentioned. Diurnal is the most one that comes to mind. But he is going to be good even against Lily May if he can take the aggro of the Lily May, for example. Rainstorm Ballet is not really going to do much to him because he's so tanky. So he can just like buy time and prevent the Lily May from actually hitting your more important heroes in the back. So overall, yeah, he's a cool hero. Definitely, I'm gonna see like Supreme Arena defenses definitely will be running him. There's no question about it. I'm sure about it. Especially in this season with the Lightbearer buff tiles with Tassi, I'm expecting like Lucca, Tassi, Rowan, Vala, and then maybe Lily May. This is going to be an insanely strong Supreme Arena defense. Already people are running that with Temesia. I think Lucca is going to supercharge that comp, making it even more difficult to deal with. In regular arena, I honestly don't think he's going to be amazing, because there's so like you have so many heroes to choose from. You can only pick 5. He is not like necessarily one of the top heroes in the game for PvP, and so like he's not going to see much use, and also he's not going to get any faction buff tiles in regular arena. So regular arena I think is going to be underwhelming, but for Supreme Arena I think he's going to be dominant. In AFK stages I think he's going to be dominant as well. So overall I think he's a cool hero. One other thing to mention is if you've already recruited for Sinbad, I would recommend do not recruit for Lucca, because basically one advantage of recruiting for Lucca right now, let's say if you haven't recruited for Sinbad, is that in the end of the season you can just swap him to another hero if you don't like how much he's improving your count or helping you out. But if you already have Sinbad, for example, then you already have an A-level hero which you can swap potentially. And honestly, in my opinion, I think Sinbad is going to be the top A-level hero of this season. Even though he's not like so useful in boss content, he has this unique effect, and even for PvP, a unique effect which makes it feel like in the future, with different game modes being added or different dynamics, I really feel like Sinbad is going to be kind of like the tech hero you want on your account. Lucca is like an unbreakable tank, but like we mentioned, you don't always have to run a Lightbearer tank. You can run a tank from a different faction. It doesn't have to be Lightbearer. But if you need a Lightbearer tank, there's nothing better than Lucca. And yeah, so that is basically my opinion about it. I do think that he is not a must pull, definitely not. I think he's nice to have on your account, but I think he's a definitely passable hero. I'm going to be passing on him, and that's also because I'm mostly focused on Dream Realm. I don't care about some minor PvP upgrades. I have enough heroes built on my account. I can make do with like Temesia instead of Lucca and the Lightbearer Tassi team if I want to run it. But if you want to just optimize that team or do really well or probably make a better AFK stage pushing team, Lucca is going to be it. And I do also think maybe in the next season, you know, when you begin a new season, those really high tanky heroes like Frastor with the Supreme Plus ability for that shield, Lucca with the shield that he will have for supporting allies, those are the heroes which you need to like buy just enough time for you to get your combos off and clear an AFK stage at a high level deficit. So I think in the beginning of the next season, Lucca is going to be important for that. Obviously not as dominant as Ulmis or Frastor, and the thing is those heroes are kind of like really useful in multiple game modes, especially Frastor. But Lucca is going to be an addition to that tank lineup and definitely a consideration. But when light bearers become weaker after these buff tiles disappear, like we're going to talk about the next season, I don't know how important he will be. That is the other thing. Like this season, definitely for AFK stages, because you have a strong light bearer comp. But let's say you didn't need the light bearer buff tiles. Like let's say there were no buff tiles to begin with. Would you want to be running Lucca instead of another hero? I don't really know. Forester would probably definitely be better. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. That is going to be it for this one. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. And if you're recruiting for him, good luck dodging the pity tomorrow. Yeah, I hope you guys can at least dodge it a couple of times, because that saves you needing to spend a bit more to get him leveled up. But thank you for watching, guys. That's gonna be it for this video. I'll hopefully see you in the next video, and until then, everyone, peace out for now.